They gathered around my 78th birthday cake, laughing as my daughter-in-law Claire asked me what year it was. When I paused, not because I didn't know, but because I was calculating exactly how many years they'd been stealing from me. They exchanged those knowing glances, the pitying smiles, the whispers of dementia and poor thing that weren't quite whispered enough. She doesn't even know what year it is, Claire announced to the room, loud enough for everyone to hear, soft enough to sound concerned. My son Michael squeezed her hand supportively. My granddaughter Vanessa filmed it on her phone, probably for their group chat where they mocked me regularly. Yes, I knew about that too. But I knew exactly what year it was. It was 2024, and it was the year I'd been meticulously documenting every single transaction, every forged signature, every lie they'd told while systematically draining my accounts and stealing my late husband's entire estate. 3 years, 2 months, and 16 days of evidence. All of it sitting in a safe deposit box they didn't know existed. Copies already delivered to someone they definitely didn't expect. Hi there, I'm Catherine. I'm calling to you today from Richmond, Virginia, where I've lived for 52 years in the same house my husband Robert and I bought when we were newlyweds. Before I tell you exactly how I made sure every single person at that birthday party got precisely what they deserved, I'd love to know, where are you watching from? Drop your location in the comments. I love hearing from all of you. Now let me take you back to where this really started, because the birthday party humiliation was just the crescendo of a symphony of betrayal that began the day my Robert died. Robert and I had built something beautiful together. He was a civil engineer, and I taught high school mathematics for 34 years. We were careful people, planners. We saved aggressively, invested wisely, and by the time Robert passed in 2021, we had accumulated a comfortable nest egg, just over $1.2 million between our retirement accounts, the paid-off house, and his life insurance policy. Not wealthy by some standards, but more than enough for me to live comfortably for the rest of my days. Robert's death wasn't sudden. Pancreatic cancer gave us 6 months warning, which sounds like a gift until you're living it. 6 months of watching the strongest man you've ever known waste away. 6 months of hospital visits, experimental treatments, and desperate hope. And 6 months of my son Michael suddenly becoming very, very interested in our financial affairs. "Mom, you need help managing all this," he'd said, appearing at my door 3 days after the funeral with Claire in tow. "Dad handled everything, and you've never been good with this stuff." Never been good with it? I taught advanced calculus. I balanced our household budget down to the penny for 5 decades. But I was grieving, exhausted, and my son was offering help. What mother doesn't want to believe her child has her best interests at heart? So I said yes. That was my first mistake. My last mistake was thinking they'd get away with it. Michael had always been ambitious. As a child, he'd wanted the biggest bike, the newest video games, the most expensive sneakers. Robert and I taught him the value of work. He got a paper route, mowed lawns, saved for the things he wanted. We thought we'd instilled good values. Looking back, maybe we just taught him to be patient in his acquisitions. He married Claire 6 years ago, a real estate agent with expensive tastes and a smile that never quite reached her eyes. She called me Mom from day one, always arriving with flowers, always remembering to ask about my book club. I wanted to love her. I tried to love her. But there was something calculated in her kindness, like she was making deposits in a bank she planned to rob later. Their daughter Vanessa was 23, living at home temporarily while she figured things out, which apparently meant spending her days on social media and her nights at expensive restaurants. She'd graduated college 2 years prior with a degree in communications and a mountain of student loan debt that Michael had confided in me about during one of Robert's hospital stays. "We're drowning, Mom," he'd said, and I'd seen real stress in his eyes. The loans, the mortgage, Claire's business expenses, were barely keeping our heads above water. The week after Robert's funeral, Michael suggested he be added to my checking account, just in case of emergencies. It seemed reasonable. I was 75, alone, still foggy with grief. What if I fell? What if I had a medical crisis? Having someone who could access my accounts to pay bills seemed like basic common sense. Then came the suggestion about power of attorney. Just financial, Mom. Just so I can help manage things. The stock portfolio, the retirement accounts. You shouldn't have to deal with all that paperwork while you're grieving. I signed it. God help me, I signed it. At first, the help seemed genuine. Michael organized Robert's papers, handled calls from the insurance company, managed the flood of condolence correspondence. But about 2 months after the funeral, I noticed something odd. A transfer from my savings to checking that I didn't remember making. When I asked Michael about it, he had an immediate explanation. That was for the property tax, Mom. Remember, we talked about it last week. Had we? The grief fog was real. I couldn't remember what I'd eaten for breakfast most days, let alone every conversation. So I nodded and accepted it. Then there was a charge at a furniture store I'd never been to. That was the new recliner for your living room, remember? You said your back was hurting. I hadn't said that. I was almost certain I hadn't said that. But there was a new recliner in my living room, an expensive leather thing I would never have chosen. When had that even been delivered? You're forgetting things, Mom, Claire said gently when I questioned a credit card bill. Maybe we should think about having you evaluated. It's nothing to be ashamed of. And that's when I realized what they were doing. They weren't helping me. They were building a narrative. The narrative they were building was simple and effective. Catherine is losing her memory. Catherine can't be trusted with financial decisions. Catherine needs to be protected from herself. And eventually, Catherine needs to be declared incompetent so we can take complete control. But here's what they didn't know about me. My mother had Alzheimer's. I watched it steal her piece by piece over 7 years. First her car keys, then her recipes, then our names, then finally her own name. I knew what real cognitive decline looked like, and I knew I wasn't experiencing it. So I started keeping records. I bought a new laptop and created a password they couldn't guess. Not birthdays or anniversaries, but the coordinates of the spot where Robert proposed to me in the Blue Ridge Mountains. I photographed every bank statement, every credit card bill, every explanation Michael gave me for charges I didn't authorize. I kept a daily journal, noting every conversation, every transaction, every time they suggested I was confused. I also did something they didn't expect from a supposedly declining elderly woman. I educated myself. I spent hours at the library researching elder financial abuse. I learned about power of attorney limitations, about what constitutes fraud, about the penalties in Virginia for exploiting a vulnerable adult. I printed everything and kept it in a folder at my friend Helen's house. Helen had been my teaching colleague for 22 years before we both retired. She was sharp, skeptical, and had never particularly liked Michael. That boy always wanted the easy path, she'd told me years ago. When I confided my suspicions to her, she didn't hesitate. Document everything, she said, and when you're ready, I know a lawyer who specializes in this. The party was scheduled for a Saturday in late April, my 78th birthday. Claire insisted on hosting it at their house. So you don't have to worry about cleaning up, Mom, and invited the whole family. Michael's sister Jennifer was flying in from Seattle with her husband Tom, various cousins, neighbors, people from my old church congregation. In the weeks leading up to it, the concerned comments increased. Mom forgot we had lunch plans yesterday, Michael told Jennifer on a call I wasn't supposed to overhear. Mom couldn't remember her neighbor's name, Claire mentioned to someone at the grocery store while I stood right there. I'd known Betty Patterson for 18 years and had called her by name literally 2 minutes earlier. They were setting a stage, and the birthday party was going to be the performance. 3 days before the party, I met with the lawyer Helen recommended. Her name was Diane Moretti, and she was exactly what I needed. Competent, no nonsense, and deeply angry about what my family was doing. This is elder financial abuse, she said, reviewing my documentation. Clear-cut fraud. The question is, do you want to pursue this criminally or civilly? Both. I said without hesitation. I want both. And we need to involve the police. I have a contact in the financial crimes division. Are you prepared for what this means? Your son could face serious charges. I looked at the spreadsheet I'd created, showing $247,000 stolen over 3 years. He should, I said. The party decorations were pink and gold, color coordinated within an inch of their lives. Claire's doing, obviously. She'd made a display board with photos of me through the years. Me as a young teacher, me and Robert on our wedding day, me with baby Michael. Conspicuously absent were any recent photos where I looked competent and healthy. The ones she'd chosen made me look smaller, frailer, older than my years. Happy birthday, Mom! Michael handed me a glass of champagne I didn't want. The house was full, about 30 people crammed into their oversized living room. I recognized most of them. Some I'd taught, some I'd known for decades, all of them about to witness what Claire and Michael had planned. It started subtly. Mom, do you remember Pastor Williams? Of course I remembered him. I'd sat in his congregation for 20 years. Mom, this is our neighbor Susan. I'd met Susan at least 5 times at previous gatherings. Each time I correctly identified someone, I could see the flicker of annoyance on Claire's face. This wasn't going according to their script. Then came the cake, a massive 2-tier thing that probably cost more of my money than I'd ever spend on my own birthday. As everyone gathered around singing, Claire positioned herself right next to me, phone in hand. Mom, she said as the singing ended, her voice pitched loud enough to carry over the chatter. Can you tell everyone how old you are today? 78, I said clearly. And what year is it? The room got quieter. This wasn't a normal birthday party question. This was a test, and everyone present suddenly realized it. I looked at her, then at Michael, who was watching with his arms crossed. I looked at Vanessa, phone up and recording. I looked at my daughter, Jennifer, who seemed confused about where this was going. I could have answered immediately. I could have said 2024 and shut it down. But I'd learned something valuable teaching teenagers for 3 decades. Sometimes the most powerful response is silence. Sometimes you let people reveal themselves. So I paused. I furrowed my brow slightly. I looked uncertain. Mom? Michael prompted, moving closer with exaggerated concern. What year is it? Is it... I hesitated, playing the role they'd written for me. Is it 2023? The look of triumph on Claire's face was undisguised. She doesn't even know what year it is, she announced to the room, not quite whispering, her voice dripping with false sympathy. She touched my arm with practiced gentleness. It's okay, Mom. It's 2024, sweetheart. You're just a little confused. Michael squeezed her hand, a gesture of shared satisfaction. They thought they'd done it. They thought they'd publicly demonstrated my incompetence in front of witnesses. What they didn't know was that I'd invited 2 additional guests to this party. Detective Sarah Chen and Detective Marcus Rodriguez from the Richmond Police Department's Financial Crimes Division were standing near the back of the room in plain clothes, having arrived 30 minutes earlier, posing as friends from my book club. And they'd recorded every word. Poor Catherine, someone murmured from the crowd. I saw heads nodding, sympathetic faces. My friend Helen, who knew the truth, looked like she wanted to explode, but she held her composure. She'd helped me choreograph this. You know what? Claire continued, her confidence growing. Maybe we should have the party another day when Mom is feeling more present. This must be so overwhelming for her. I'm fine, I said quietly, playing confused. I get mixed up sometimes. We know you do, Mom, Michael said, his voice saccharine. That's why Claire and I have been helping you with your finances. Someone needs to make sure the bills get paid, right? He said it casually, but it was for the audience. Establishing the narrative, making sure everyone heard that they were the responsible ones, the dutiful son and daughter-in-law managing the affairs of their declining mother. Jennifer stepped forward. Michael, what are you talking about? Mom's always been sharp as a tack. Jenny, you live in Seattle. Claire said with practiced patience. You don't see her every day like we do. The forgotten appointments, the repeated questions, the confusion about dates and times. We've been managing it quietly because we didn't want to worry you, but maybe it's time everyone knew how serious this is getting. I think, Michael added, pulling a folded paper from his jacket pocket, it might be time to discuss memory care facilities. I actually brought some brochures. That won't be necessary, I said, my voice suddenly clear and sharp. The room went silent. I straightened up, dropped the confused expression, and looked my son directly in the eye. What I do need to discuss, I continued, is the $247,000 you've stolen from me over the past 3 years. Michael's face went white. Claire's smile finally disappeared. Mom, what are you... I need to discuss the forged signatures on withdrawal forms, the unauthorized transfers, the credit cards opened in my name for purchases I never made, the systematic theft that you've been covering up by trying to convince everyone, including me, that I'm incompetent. This is the dementia. Talking, Claire said quickly, looking around at the guests. She gets paranoid, accuses us of things. Is it dementia? I interrupted, pulling my own phone from my pocket, that allowed me to document every single transaction, every lie, every theft? Is it dementia that helped me create a 60-page dossier with bank records, forged documents, and a timeline of your fraud? I turned to address the room. I apologize to all of you for the dissection today, but I needed witnesses to see what they've been doing, trying to publicly establish that I'm mentally incompetent so they can maintain control of my finances while they drain my accounts. Now would be a perfect time to pause and ask you something important. If you're finding this story as unbelievable as it was to live through, please hit that subscribe button. You won't want to miss how this ends, and I share more stories of people who fought back and won. Your support means everything. Michael found his voice. This is insane. Mom, you need help. What she needs, Detective Chen said, stepping forward with her badge, is for both of you to answer some questions. The room erupted in gasps and confused murmuring. Detective Rodriguez moved to stand beside Chen, both of them now clearly identifying themselves as law enforcement. Richmond Police Department, Chen announced. We're with financial crimes. Mr. Harrison, Mrs. Harrison, we need you to remain where you are. Michael's face had gone from white to red. This is entrapment or something. You can't. We can and we are, Rodriguez said calmly. Mrs. Harrison came to us 3 weeks ago with substantial evidence of financial elder abuse. We've been conducting an investigation. Claire grabbed Michael's arm. Don't say anything. We need a lawyer. That's certainly your right, Chen said, but Mrs. Harrison has agreed to walk us through her evidence here in front of witnesses before we proceed. Ma'am? She nodded to me. I pulled out the folder I'd tucked beside my chair earlier. My hands weren't shaking. They were steady. This was the moment I'd been planning for months. Let's start with January 2022, I said, opening to the first page. 2 months after my husband died, a withdrawal of $15,000 from my savings account, supposedly for home repairs. Michael, can you tell everyone what repairs were done to my house in January 2022? It was the roof, he stammered. My roof was replaced in 2019. I have the receipts. Robert and I paid $8,200 to Morrison Roofing. The roof had a 20-year warranty. I pulled out a photo. This is my roof, taken last week. Same shingles, no repairs. I didn't wait for a response. February 2022, a $6,000 transfer labeled medical expenses. I was in perfect health. My Medicare and supplemental insurance covered everything. There were no medical expenses. March 2022, I continued, flipping pages. A credit card was opened in my name at a furniture store, $11,000 in charges. The billing address was changed to your house. I never saw a single statement until I requested copies directly from the company. Jennifer was staring at her brother in horror. Michael, what did you do? I'm showing you what he did, I said. April 2022. $20,000 withdrawal for investment opportunities. No investment was ever made. May 2022, $8,500 for a new car for me. I never bought a car. I still drive the 2018 Camry that Robert and I purchased together. I kept going, month by month, watching Michael and Claire's faces as their carefully constructed lies crumbled. Some of the guests had started crying. Others looked furious. June 2022, I said, my voice hardening. The largest theft. $75,000 transferred from my retirement account to a joint account that Michael opened without my knowledge. The signature on the authorization form is supposedly mine. I held up two documents side by side. This is the signature on the form. This is my actual signature. I taught mathematics for 34 years. I think I can recognize a forgery. I had it analyzed by a forensic document examiner. The report is in Detective Chen's possession. Michael collapsed into a chair. Claire stood frozen, her face a mask. August 2022, I continued relentlessly. September 2022, October 2022. By the time I reached 2024, the room was completely silent except for my voice reciting dates, amounts, and lies. 3 years of systematic theft, laid out in excruciating detail. Every fake invoice, every unauthorized charge, every forged signature. The total amount stolen is $247,318, I said finally. That's not including the damage to my credit score from late payments on accounts I didn't know existed, or the stress and emotional anguish of having my own son and his wife try to convince me and everyone who knows me that I was losing my mind. How? Michael's voice was barely a whisper. How did I figure it out? I smiled without humor. I'm 78, Michael, not stupid. I taught advanced mathematics to teenagers who tried to cheat on exams for 3 decades. You think I can't spot a pattern? You think I can't reconcile accounts? The dementia? There is no dementia, I said sharply. There never was. That was your invention. A convenient explanation for why I might question transactions, why I might seem confused about charges I never authorized. You needed me to doubt myself, to make everyone else doubt me, so you could maintain control. Detective Chen stepped forward. Mrs. Harrison's medical records show no cognitive decline. We had her evaluated by an independent physician as part of our investigation. She's of completely sound mind. I even took the MMSE, I added. That's the mini mental state examination. Perfect score. 30 out of 30. The doctor said my cognitive function is above average for my age. Claire finally found her voice. She's been planning this. She tricked us. You tricked yourselves, I said. You assumed that because I'm elderly and recently widowed, I'd be an easy target. You assumed I wouldn't notice, wouldn't understand, wouldn't fight back. You're not victims here, Claire. You're thieves. Rodriguez pulled out handcuffs. Michael Harrison, Claire Harrison, you're under arrest for financial exploitation of an adult, forgery, identity theft, and fraud. Wait, you can't arrest us here. Claire's voice rose to a shriek. Not in front of everyone. Actually, Chen said, Mrs. Harrison specifically requested we do this at the party. She wanted the same audience who watched you try to humiliate her to watch you be held accountable. As Rodriguez read them their rights, Michael looked at me with something between betrayal and disbelief. I'm your son. You were my son, I said quietly, but my son wouldn't have stolen from me. My son wouldn't have tried to convince me I was losing my mind. My son wouldn't have exploited his father's death for financial gain. We needed the money. Then you should have asked. If you were truly struggling, if you truly needed help, you could have come to me honestly. Robert and I taught you better than this. We taught you that integrity matters more than money. We did ask, Claire burst out. You said no. You said we needed to be more responsible. I looked at her. So you stole from me instead. That tells me everything I need to know about your character. They were led out in handcuffs. The party guests parted like the Red Sea as Rodriguez and Chen escorted Michael and Claire toward the door. Claire was crying now, mascara running down her face. still trying to maintain some dignity as her neighbors watched. Michael walked with his head down, handcuffs glinting in the afternoon light streaming through the windows. Vanessa, who had filmed the earlier humiliation so gleefully, now stood with her phone hanging limply at her side. She looked at me with wide eyes. "Grandma, I didn't know, didn't you?" I kept my voice neutral. "You filmed them mocking me. You participated in the group chat where they made fun of me. You benefited from money they stole. That laptop you're holding wasn't paid for with their money. It was paid for with mine. I didn't know it was stolen. But you knew something was wrong. You watched them treat me like I was incompetent. You never once questioned whether they were right." Jennifer pushed past several guests to reach me. "Mom, I swear I had no idea. If I'd known—" "I know you didn't, honey." I took her hand. "You live across the country. You trusted your brother. That's not your fault. Why didn't you tell me?" Tears were streaming down her face. "When you first suspected, why didn't you call me?" "Because I needed documentation, not emotions. I needed evidence that would hold up in court, not a family fight that would give them time to cover their tracks. And—" I paused. "I needed to do this myself, to prove to myself, more than anyone, that I'm not the helpless old woman they wanted me to be." Helen appeared at my elbow with a glass of water. "You did good, Kat." "Is this really happening?" Tom, Jennifer's husband, looked dazed. "Michael's going to jail?" "That depends on a lot of factors," I said. "What he's charged with, whether he pleads guilty, what the judge decides. But yes, there will be consequences." The party guests were starting to leave, most of them uncomfortable, some stopping to hug me or whisper support. Pastor Williams gripped my hand. "I'm so sorry you went through this, Catherine." "Thank you for coming," I said. "I know this wasn't the celebration anyone expected." After about 20 minutes, only Jennifer, Tom, Helen, and a few close friends remained. We sat in Claire's carefully decorated living room, the birthday cake untouched, the pink and gold balloons bobbing cheerfully in a scene that felt surreal. "What happens now?" Jennifer asked. "Now we wait for the legal process to unfold. My lawyer Diane is excellent. She's already filed civil suits for recovery of the stolen money. The criminal case is in the prosecutor's hands." "What about Vanessa?" I sighed. "She's 23, an adult who made choices. But she's not being criminally charged. The police determined she wasn't directly involved in the theft, just a beneficiary of it. That doesn't mean there won't be civil liability, but that's for the courts to determine. And the house," Tom gestured around us, "they won't be able to afford the mortgage if they're both—" "Not my problem," I said simply. The criminal trial took 8 months to begin. Michael and Claire initially pleaded not guilty, which didn't surprise anyone. Their attorney, an expensive defense lawyer they somehow managed to afford despite claiming poverty, tried every tactic to discredit me. They argued I was vindictive, that I'd fabricated evidence out of spite, that I was actually experiencing cognitive decline and didn't understand what I'd signed. They brought in their own expert witness to claim the signatures could have been mine. They painted me as a bitter widow who'd never liked Claire and was punishing her through Michael. None of it worked. The forensic evidence was ironclad. The document examiner testified that at least 15 signatures were definitively forged. The bank records showed a clear pattern of unauthorized transfers. My medical evaluation proved I was completely competent. And the recording from the birthday party, with Claire openly discussing how they'd been managing my finances and Michael suggesting memory care facilities, demolished any claim that I'd been a willing participant. Even better, the investigation uncovered additional fraud I hadn't known about. Apparently, Michael had also taken out a home equity line of credit against my house, my paid-off house, using forged documents. Another $80,000 I hadn't even known was missing. Diane, my lawyer, was magnificent. She presented my 3 years of documentation like a prosecutor at Nuremberg, methodical, unemotional, devastating. She showed my daily journals, proving cognitive function. She displayed the spreadsheets I'd created, tracking every theft. She called witnesses who testified to my sharp memory and clear thinking. Jennifer testified too, tearfully explaining that she'd believed her brother's lies about my declining health, that she'd had no idea what was really happening. The prosecution didn't charge her with anything. She'd been a victim of their manipulation too. On the seventh day of trial, Michael and Claire changed their pleas to guilty. Their lawyer must have explained that continuing to trial would result in harsher sentences. The evidence was simply too overwhelming. The sentencing hearing was 2 weeks later. I attended, sitting in the front row with Jennifer on one side and Helen on the other. Michael and Claire stood before the judge looking diminished, nothing like the confident couple who'd orchestrated my birthday party humiliation. The prosecutor recommended 5 years for Michael, 3 for Claire. Their attorney begged for leniency, community service, probation. He emphasized that they had a daughter, that they'd never been in trouble before, that they were remorseful. The judge listened to everything, then looked directly at Michael. You exploited your own mother during the most vulnerable period of her life. You stole from her while she was grieving her husband. You attempted to destroy her reputation and have her declared incompetent to cover your crimes. This wasn't a momentary lapse in judgment. This was a calculated, sustained campaign of abuse against an elderly family member. She sentenced Michael to 4 years in prison and ordered him to pay full restitution plus damages. Claire received 2 years and the same financial penalties. They were also both banned from having power of attorney or serving as a fiduciary for any elderly person for the rest of their lives. When it was over, Michael looked back at me one final time. I don't know what he expected to see. Forgiveness? Regret? I met his eyes and felt nothing but relief. The civil case settled 4 months after the criminal sentencing. Michael and Claire's assets were liquidated. The house, the cars, Claire's real estate business equipment, everything. It wasn't enough to cover what they'd stolen, but I recovered about $195,000 of the original $247,000. The home equity loan they'd taken out was forgiven since it was obtained fraudulently, and my house remained mine, free and clear. The remaining money? Some of it was just gone, spent on their lifestyle. But the court ordered ongoing garnishment of their wages once they were released from prison. I'll probably never see all of it, but that's not really the point anymore. Vanessa moved out of Michael and Claire's house before the foreclosure. She sent me a letter, not an apology. Exactly, but an acknowledgement that she should have questioned what was happening. We're not close. I don't know if we ever will be, but I appreciated that she at least tried to take some responsibility. Jennifer visits twice a year now, and we talk every week. She still struggles with guilt over not seeing what her brother was doing, even though it wasn't her fault. We're working through it together, slowly rebuilding trust in family that I'm not sure either of us will ever fully have again. I'm still in my house in Richmond, still sharp, still independent, still driving my 2018 Camry. I rejoined my book club, which had gotten a bit sporadic during the worst of it. Helen and I have coffee every Tuesday morning. I started volunteering at the library, helping seniors navigate computers and online banking. I figure my experience makes me uniquely qualified to teach people how to protect themselves. The story made local news, and then briefly national news when a reporter picked it up. I did one interview with our local station, mostly because I wanted other elderly people to know that if something feels wrong, it probably is. Trust your instincts. Document everything. Don't let anyone convince you that you're confused when you know you're not. People ask me if I forgive Michael. The honest answer is that I don't think about him much anymore. He made his choices. He'll live with the consequences. Forgiveness feels like something he'd need to earn, and I don't know if that's possible after what he did. Maybe that makes me hard. Maybe I should feel more sadness that my son is in prison. But mostly, I just feel free. The birthday party was supposed to be my humiliation. Instead, it became the day I took back my power, my dignity, and my future. They thought 78 meant vulnerable. They thought widow meant weak. They thought elderly meant easy target. They learned exactly what year it was when they got arrested. 2024, the year their victim turned out to be smarter than they ever imagined. I'm Catherine. I'm 78 years old. My memory is perfect. And I won. If my story resonated with you, if you know someone who needs to hear it, please share this video. And remember, you're never too old to fight back, and you're never too old to win.